It's a bigger purpose, right? I don't cheat on my wife because my wife is fine. No amount of food she can cook, no matter how thick her thighs are and how hippie she is, which I like, that's not what's gonna keep me. I don't cheat on my wife because
I'm kicking in your front. Great peeping in your drapes. Rob making the plate in the back. T-Hall Podcast. T-Hall Podcast. T-Hall Podcast. T-Hall Podcast. Right now. T-Fall Podcast, we live, and we got some interesting things to talk about. Like we always try to keep it that way.
Come on.
And we don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment as you watch. And if you got some comments, we'll try to get to them and read them and make sure we can answer some questions. Just put it in the chat, put it in the little comment box, and we'll get at it. So we got Ray in the building. We got special guests tonight, which all our guests are special in many different ways. And tonight we have Mr. Boyd, better known as Broad. And so I'll give you a little roadmap of where we're going. Tonight we want to talk about how important still is church in our society, amongst our people, amongst all people. How important is it that we fellowship, as the good book says, assembling ourselves together, so that we can grow and strengthen each other. And also we want to go in a little bit and just talk about entrepreneurship with our faith, being able to still be a businessman, still be successful, and at the same time be a man of faith and integrity and driven by a devotion to the Most High God. This is Frankie D coming at you. And now we're going to throw these questions at Broad, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to have a good time tonight as we used to. Broad, where you want to start at? Talk to us, man. We live.
I mean, wherever you want to start. First of all, I'm happy to be here, right? I've seen some of the stuff that you've done, and I'm glad, I'm proud to say I've known you for years.
Yeah, long time.
Until age.
Long time, right? So, but this is good, man. Proud of what you guys are doing here.
Yeah, and I'm glad you had the time to do it. And one of our mottos is if we can get you and we got the time, we'll make it happen.
Absolutely.
Even if we got to come where you are. We don't like to, but we'll make it happen. Because there's a lot of stuff to lug around, and Ray don't like to lift stuff and help. But we'll get it there. We live.
That's old school. I used to do that back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we live. So look, man, you don't want to talk about it, but we have been knowing each other for 34 years since the days of Carol C. the Middle. Now, he doesn't look that old.
Vegetarian, yeah.
But he's getting on up there. He's getting on up there. He's getting on up there. And we're going to talk a little bit about the beginnings of what may have got you to the point where you really saw how important it is to live and have our faith in everything that we do.
Sure. I mean, it's a guide, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people, their first introduction to faith is a church. Is grandma taking you to church or your parents taking you to church, that kind of experience, right? And so a lot of people, they go for the experience, but never really learned the methods or the reason behind it. Mm-hmm. It became just something to do. So every weekend you would show up to church because grandma took you to church, and you may dance, you may perform, you may feel the spirit, if you will, feel some levels of excitement. But for most people, they can't even break down why is it they believe what they believe. And so for me, it was always important not just to show up every single weekend because my parents took me or they wanted me to go, but what is it that I believe, right? What's the difference out here? Why is it important to live by a certain rule or tenets to guide your life? And what I found is that it's important. If you just lean on, well, it's how I feel, then that's a moving target.
Yeah.
And often people say, well, I'm more, and I know this may get controversial, but people say I'm more spiritual than I am religious. That's a big one, right? And what they're actually saying is, I don't want to subscribe to a system or a system of rules and guide. I just want to be spiritual. But what you're actually saying is, I just want to go by how I feel.
Yeah.
And we have to be careful because our feelings are not an accurate indicator as to what is right.
No.
And people kind of get in that mode where religion is not a negative thing. Religion is just simply a system of processes or practices that you believe.
Yeah.
So even if you say, I come home every day, I turn on the light, I cook food, that could be a system of practice of religion that you do. Yeah. Religion is not a bad word. So people run from that, but what they end up doing is living a life without any guidance, without any structure.
Yeah.
And without structure and without guidance, you have a free fall.
Yeah.
And that's not something that Yeshua taught anyway. He didn't teach religion. So that's why people kind of confuse it a little bit and go, well, what does it mean? But I like the way you just broke that down.
If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah. And even with that, right, what you said in terms of, you say Yeshua, Jesus, right, for those who are
exactly
understanding that. So it's not that he did teach religion in terms of a system.
System, a way.
Right? He taught a way.
The way.
So a way is a system.
It's a system.
That is a system because you can't follow a way or say, follow me in the way unless there's a guide, there's a path. If you say, do whatever you want to do, that's no longer a system or a way. So that's what I'm saying is most people get caught up on religion being negative because that's how society presented it. But there always is a process, a way, a methodology. If you want to lose weight, you can't just wake up and say, I'm going to lose weight and then keep eating the same things, keep doing the same thing. There is a way, a process, a system that you must do to say, I want to get closer to losing this weight for religion or for faith. There must be something I do or I live by that says I'm getting closer to God or I want to live a certain life of God. If not, then you get what we get in society where most people say Christianity, if that's the faith system that you're a part of. But most people say I'm Christian, but live otherwise.
Exactly.
And people who are not then look at that and say, man, I don't want to be Christian.
Yeah.
Because of how it's presented.
Yeah.
How it's presented.
And there's two words that make following that guideline or that way difficult, and it's easier to go with that. I'm spiritual, and that's discipline and sacrifice.
Correct.
Those two words people are afraid of.
Correct.
Because it's going to require that.
I think spiritual just became a cop-out, like you said. It just became a way of people just going, you know what, I really don't want to believe in this or that or this. I'm just spiritual because you want to be lukewarm.
Because remember, what was spiritual, the root word is spirit.
Right.
What's leading you?
Right.
It's the spirit.
Right.
Spirituality is important and it's part of religion. It's no separation.
There's no separation.
They make it where it's separate. No, I'm spiritual.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe in religion. I always tell people, James says, true religion and pure religion is to visit the fatherless and the widows.
Yeah.
That's just basically love.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand what that means to have that type of love for people, even though they don't believe what you believe.
Because you're taking out accountability.
Yeah.
To say I'm anti-religion, I'm more spiritual. And again, it's not a bash. This is an opportunity for us to have a discussion.
Yeah, they go together.
But what is important is that you're removing accountability.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate thing is if we had more accountability. So I don't cheat on, I'm not married, but if I'm I don't cheat on my wife because my wife is fine. I don't cheat on my wife because I answer to a higher calling.
Yeah.
That's a bigger purpose, right? It's not, there's no amount of food she can cook.
Yeah.
There's no fine, no matter how thick her thighs are.
Yeah.
And how hippie she is, which I like.
Yeah.
Right? That's not what's going to keep me. It's got to be something else that's more honorable to let me say, nah, I don't want to do that against my God.
Dedicated. Yeah.
Right?
Dedicated
something
to
else.
That,
and that's a great example.
To that way.
I've never... I hear people talk about it like that, but then no one ever broke it down just like that because you still have the people who believe like I don't believe in religion and then I believe in spirituality, and then you have the people who say, look, the Father didn't teach religion; he taught the way, and what is the way, and the way you explained it. Yeah.
So it's one of the same as Frank mentioned, right? That you cannot separate. You can't say I love you, but I mistreat you. It is part of the action, right? You must live out what you're saying.
So people need to know you can have a dirty religion too.
You can have a dirty religion, yeah.
Because the Spirit leads you. It's the Spirit that leads you into that, to guide you and lead you into the decisions you have to make as you follow the way. The Spirit is the one that helps you say, no, you don't need, that's God still talking to you, working with you as you are on that way. So the Spirit is part of your religious walk And that's what we want to talk about, making sure people understand that they're not separate.
And let me say something too. I know we're going to transition to something else, but just to make it plain, whenever I'm having these kinds of discussion, is that when you consider yourself, right, you have a way in which how you manage your household. So when people come in your house, if you want them to take off their shoes, that's your rule, right? You want people to observe that. We all have rules. Listen, man, don't eat in my car. Don't do this. Don't do that. We all have these rules that we apply. But when it comes to God, we want to say, well, I don't think God, I don't care about God's rules, or he shouldn't have any rules for me. He should allow me to do whatever I want. So what you're saying is you have the power to create your own rules and guidelines and structure. But when it comes to God, who created all this, if you believe that, right, then suddenly he just wants you to be just carefree with it. It just doesn't make sense. You're actually making yourself like God while treating God like he's just an average person on the street.
But some people have taken free will to the next level, though. So that's a whole nother
taking it out of context.
Out of context.
I mean, there's not next level, but out of context. So I understand what you mean. They have. So we talk about now belief. Is very important. And you talked about that time, growing up in church and how some people don't misunderstand what they believe. When did you start to really understand what you believe and how important it is to be able to defend what you believe?
It started early for me, but I think it was more pronounced in college. I went to the great Florida A&M University, FAMU, right? And so when you were at FAMU was blessed, I believe at the time, and some of you will understand what this means, but it was like 18-1. And I don't need to get any more deep into that, but 18-1, right? And so FAMU was nice. You had beautiful things all around campus.
Temptations, we could say.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to say it, right? So you had nice things on campus, sharp, intelligent, beautiful, all these things. But when you go through that, when that's gone away, or that no longer exists, and you're dealing with bills and all these other challenges, then you have to come down to, well, what decision will you make? What life will you live to be able to earn this money to pay these bills? And so I had a series of events that happened. Matter of fact, what helped to change my life, you were with me when a good friend of mine passed away. She passed away. And we had to make that drive to the funeral, to the wake. But her death, she was shot working. Someone walked in the store to rob the store, and they took probably $20, $30 and then shot her just because. And so watching her die at such a young age helped to solidify for me the importance of how short life is, how precious it is, and what am I doing with my life? Yeah, I could, pursue all these other nice, pretty things, or I get this money quick, or I want to live a life of purpose and meaning. So for me, even though I grew up around church, in church, my parents, all those other things, for me, it was something that arrested me individually. And I think that sometimes that's important. We call it conviction, right? So my own conviction was watching what was around me, seeing the life taken so quickly, and someone so precious, and it caused me to reevaluate.
Reevaluate how important it was. And knowing what you believe,
right,
and when challenged. Because you mentioned FAMU, and growing up we grew up in church. And, we knew that you were going to face certain challenges. You're going to first face certain temptations that will challenge your faith, or really challenge what you believe. Like you mentioned, 18-1. But there's a lot of parties, and there's a lot that can lure you in from your faith.
Right.
And sometimes you question it. Sometimes people always will say, well, why you believe that? And it becomes where you have to know why you believe what you believe, and being able to deal with the objections of why you believe. And that's important and that's something that's lacking in our society today, not only in our world. Right. Very few people could defend what they believe.
Right.
What they believe as far as religious, whatever they accept as their religion. Very few people.
Don't you think a lot of people nowadays are just? I shouldn't say a lot of people, because we can't put everybody in a census.
But a lot is cool.
But you can say a lot right now are pulling away from it. There's so many other temptations from, say, rap music that's turning people to a different direction, or telling them what to do, and people are becoming followers more than anything. And now it's a thing to be a part of a cult. of following someone than actually finding out your true purpose of what you need to do right now in life.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. What we were taught.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, being able to say if somebody came to you and say, "Man, you going to the party? They're gonna be drinking and all that." And then here you grew up in the church knowing that we don't drink, we don't do that. Now you're getting challenged with that. You got all these 18-1 coming at you, and fornication. You know that you've been told fornication is gonna keep you out of heaven since we was little. You know what I'm saying? All of that stuff. So now here you are, and you got to be able to deal with it and be able to respond to it, where people don't think that, hey man, he off his rocker, man. He talking about he don't drink because the Bible say he don't supposed to be drinking. That's the temple of God and all that. So you see what I'm saying? So defending and being able to still be in those environments, that's very challenging and difficult. You know, I remember when we being young like that and being faced with all that. And you know, me and Jarvis were in the same church together. Then we transitioned, but we knew that. And everybody knows to a certain degree what's right and wrong. Now, whether they want to confront it, deal with it in front of anybody, any situation, that takes a lot of that spirit guiding you and dedication to be able to, no matter what you're presented with, no matter where you're presented with it, you can stand on what it was.
Yeah, I mean, what I encourage people is, no, it's not easy, but I equate it to your lifestyle in terms of how you grew up, right? Whether you grew up in inner cities or you grew up in suburbia, whatever it is. But within our culture, there's a certain honor and code that we live by. So you'll never snitch on your friend if you know you got involved in, you did something with them. You're not going to snitch on your friend. There's a code that we live by, right? That we know isn't within our community. I look at it and I equate it to, okay, if God is my closest friend, I would never want to betray him. So sometimes we give a little bit more props to our boys because we don't want to dog them out, but we'll treat God and say, well, he won't mind. So again, I'm not saying it as if it's perfect situation.
Yeah,
I'm just giving some tools in terms of what is helpful, what has been helpful to me. Now, 18-1 coming at you or whatever, you slip a little bit, you slip a lot.
18,
you know.
you ain't got no,
Yeah, so we have to get it right. Yeah. So, but there's a principle to say,
it helps.
Hey, if I wouldn't dog my boy out, right? If I wouldn't betray my boy, then I wouldn't want to betray my God. And so that helps to guide some of the decisions.
Yeah, and I want everyone to understand that this is a relationship that's built up over time to where you can be able to do what Joseph did.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
Where you be able to do that, where you can say that I won't do that before my God when he was tempted with one of the most attractive women in the kingdom, which was the wife of the king and Pharaoh. You can't do that. So, but he used that as a defense that I can't do that before God. And you have to come to that point. Now, that's a journey that we all are on to be to that point in our life where we could stand no matter what for what we believe he was faced. And of course, the king knew that he didn't do it.
Right,
so he wasn't killed. He was
in
prison.
Yeah.
He wasn't killed.
I think society treats God like a parent that doesn't know anything.
Right.
You're going through the teenage stage, and people are like, well, you just don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what I'm feeling, Yeah. And treats, God like a parent.
You don't go to my school. You can't understand.
You don't know what's going on. And I think that's a big issue nowadays of the relationship on how it's looked at,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that important relationship is looked down upon to be a dedicated person to God in our society today. 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it was just part of what we were as a people. The country, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, the country was founded on those principles. But now people got so many problems with God, but everything else goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll push back a little bit, not to be controversial, but
I want you to be.
But that's a myth. So this country, I know we say it, but it wasn't founded on godly principles. It is said that it was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. You can't be founded on godly Christian principles and want to slice off the head of every Native American that you see, or rape every black woman that you see. You understand? So so to say it was what it was founded on was the ability to get money and to get away from popes and kings, to establish
Those
our
that
own
fled,
situation.
that fled.
The original founders, Thomas Jefferson and so forth, they were deists. They weren't Christians.
Yeah.
So they were not. So I know we say that a lot, but I want to make sure that people have a factual thing, because again, my whole mission, I'm a businessman and I believe in God and so forth, but I want to make sure that those who are questioning faith, are questioning whether or not God is real, that they don't hear these kinds of normal things that's become part of our society to say that this country is founded on Christian principles. And then they look back and say, well, why is there so much atrocity?
And that's what happens.
Why is there so
all the
much
time.
racism? Now, I don't want to be a part of that. So I want to be able to say, no, they said the words. There were people who were enslaving people who would quote the Bible.
Yeah.
And so people say, well, I don't want to be a Christian because, the slave master did. No, they misquoted the Bible.
You have a lot of that happening.
Yeah,
now.
you can't blame the faith for people misquoting something.
Exactly. Thank you.
But now, I mean, America was the only country that allowed those that were fleeing persecution religious liberty.
Religious liberty.
Yeah. So America was the only country where you could come and you could live and accept. You could be a Catholic. You could be whatever in America. Nowhere else allowed that. So it was founded on that principle of religious liberty, freedom to worship who all you accept.
As long as we like you. So I'm not again fighting.
Yeah.
As long as we like what you're doing. So that was part of it too.
It's worse now, but then,
Right. But even then, because
'cause it
Catholics
wasn't
were
no-
mistreated. Right? If you were
Not when they got
Catholic.
here, though.
No, yeah. It was a Protestant thing. Remember JFK in the 60s running for president.
Yeah, you talking
The
about
reason
way
why
late,
that was a
way
big
late, way
thing was because he was a Catholic person.
Yeah.
They did not feel he was required. So it wasn't, so again, not to whatever, but the idea and the concept is always nice. The application is where we mess up.
Well, always, yeah.
And
That's where we
Catholicism is a whole nother story.
Whole nother story, right? Another discussion. But my
Yeah.
point is just that it wasn't about you could do whatever you want, worship whatever you want. The reason why Salem witch things, why they were burning people
In
to determine whether or not they were witch, because if you just looked a little bit different, if you just act a little different,
In certain places.
in certain
Yeah,
places.
yeah.
So it wasn't about the freedom of whatever you choose to. We just, live and let live.
Well, they allow refuge.
It was still about if it was something we liked.
But
right?
we wasn't killing nobody for what they believed. They were fleeing for that. That came later.
So here's the thing. So how do we reach? Talking about all of this, which is very, very important. How do we reach the youth today? Because
Right.
there are youth ministries out there and people out here who are doing really good at what they do. I don't want to knock that at all.
Sure.
But then also we're losing. It feels like we're losing. It feels like I'm not going to.
We are. Statistically, we are.
Yeah, statistically, we're losing people.
Yeah.
So how do we grab them back right now? Because now, gospel rap has been coming out, and people feel like I can gravitate to that, and all these little different things right now. So how do we grab? What do you think we should do to help grab the youth back and just pull them off these streets a little bit? You're gonna leave some on the streets, but how do we pull some out and save the few that are listening?
I mean, I don't think it's a one size fits all scenario,
That's
right?
true.
It's the reality is that we have to get our house in order. As Frank mentioned, things were different maybe 50 years ago, but that means that those of us who raised this generation are to blame. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't want to take that accountability, right? And so we raise this generation to say, I don't really care about church as much. Or when our parents were consistently going, we would go whenever we felt like it, not recognizing our kids were watching that.
Yeah, and even though we were raised to go all the time.
All the time,
Yeah.
we said, I don't want to go all the time. And then our kids said, well, I don't need to go all the time either. So we went less than our parents. Now our kids go less than us. So we're to blame
And
for some of those things.
Their kids ain't gonna go.
Right. Correct. So again, I think part of it is being able to have the real discussions of getting back to why am I going to church? Why do I have faith? And if we don't answer those questions, I think we need to start there first. And if you can intelligently express why I have a faith system, why I know that God kept me when that accident was hitting or whatever it is, right? My faith has kept me through this. Then we got to be able to pass that on in real clear conversations, right?
Especially in our lives.
Especially in our lives, but I don't think we can beat them over the head with the Bible. There are a lot of the younger generation, they don't even believe it's real.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to have a real discussion about what is the old school evangelist thing, which is what has Christ done for you, or what has faith done for you. So you can always debate whether or not this is true, that's true, but what you cannot debate is the effect it's had on my life.
And we should teach the kids too that you don't have to be in the physical church nowadays to actually Is that a thing now? You don't really need to be in a physical church.
You
should be
said teach the kids that.
I mean, can we also teach them that? Because if you're not going to get them up to get into a church, get in a car and go to a physical church, they can get online and actually go to church online, still learn, gather, communicate with like minds, and still do something. We need to have that option out there too as well. Right?
They can, but again, I'm counterculture, and faith is counterculture. So the culture says you can do it virtually and remotely. You can on occasion. Counterculture, from a biblical, if that's where we're going, from a faith perspective, says, I know the culture can have it casually, but faith says, no, you got to move together. Yeah. One of the greatest preachers I know is Walter Pearson, right? And he's passed away now. I became very good friends with him and part of the family. But he gives an account of when he went to a diamond factory, right? And he had no money, but he went with his wife to this diamond factory. And he's looking, and he said the person giving the tour taught him something very profound. He said, the diamond is one of the hardest objects on earth. And the only thing that could cut a diamond is another diamond. And so what he equates that to is that's what the gathering together is. Because God knows that the person on the block is not going to really be able to cut you or challenge you to do better. But that person who knows the word or knows God or has a strong faith system, they can challenge you, cut you in a certain way to refine you, to make you better. So yes, you can do things virtually. I do it often. I watch it on YouTube, all those kind of things. Yeah. But there's a counterculture that says you got to come together, because it's in the moving together. It's in the fellowshipping together that you're able to look at somebody and say, hey, otherwise we could have done this virtually tonight too. But it's something different when we're together. Right? There's some energy that moves when we're together, so you can know, man, that brother is actually, he presents well on camera, but when he shows up to you, you get to know that you smell alcohol in his breath. So you know he's struggling. That it's 10 o'clock in the morning, he's already had 5 shots. So maybe something else going on that you wouldn't catch on film.
We're not talking about Frank right now, but go ahead.
Yeah.
You wouldn't catch virtually, right?
But see, that's what the good book says. Not forsaking.
Do not forsake
the assembly of ourselves together. So now, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We've been going to churches. Jesus went to church.
Right.
For thousands of years from now. We always my biggest thing with the old and young, and we talk about, I'm always going to say it, is we don't keep what has got us here. We throw that stuff away and we accept all these new concepts and principles, and it's taking us further away from ever being what our parents were and whatever. So to go back to what you were saying, and your question is, we have to go back to the basics with the young folks, because the Word of God, the Bible, it don't need nothing else. It don't need nothing but being preached and presented in lives and from the pulpits.
But deception is pulling them away, though. Deception.
Yeah, but we allow a lot, and we talked about how parents are, how so much has changed, our community, our societies, and that's why families are so important. Which we don't have many families now. Everything is dying. Nobody's not getting married like in the '60s and late '50s. All that stuff is leaving, and that's why it's so important to have those families, so you can teach your kids, have dinner with your kids, do all the things that help them and prepare them for the life and the world that's in front of us. So I'm a person for basics. To answer the question you were saying, is we got to go back to basics and teaching the Bible in our lives and in everything that we do. That's what we talk about tonight, being able to take what we believe into our entrepreneurship, into our lives, into our business, into our interactions with so many people. When I was in the ministry heavy like that, I used to, it didn't matter what you believed, I was going to show you love. And I never forget, I was working with a guy that he was a Buddhist. And he told me he was Buddhist. And we used to, and I knew that I wasn't going to try to throw the Bible at him and beat him over the head with it. But we worked together all the time, because as a part of our ministry, they wanted us to go out and stay active. Don't just study and read. Go visit people, do that. And then take on some little jobs where you can learn some trades. This guy dug pools, and I spent a lot of time with him. But he was Buddhist. And I used to always pray before I left, got my little stuff together. I said, Lord, I want to know how I will be able to influence him for good without me having to, because he was already tainted by what he saw from Christianity. So once I told him what I believe in God and all that. So God gave an opportunity. There was one day, and it was one day he was really perplexed about a job. And he was on the phone and he was really going through it, trying to find out how he was going to resolve this issue. And I just looked out the window and I just bowed my head and I said, Lord, help him out of this. Work this out for him and show him. And so time went on and he came and said, man, everything worked out there. And I told him, I said a little prayer for you that everything go all right. He said, you did? He said, so that prayer stuff really works, doesn't it? I say, you better believe it. And from that day on, he would ask me what I was eating, because I was vegan, strong vegan. From that day on, he would ask me, so you really believe? So the door was open.
Right.
The ice was cracked.
Right.
But God has to help us with that too. How are we going to reach these young people? How are we going to reach people in this day and age with so much going on? The attention span is gone.
So much in their face. Yeah.
So much happens so fast. How are we going to reach them? And that's where, as it says in the scripture, it says that, the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. And it says, pray to the master so they can send what?
More laborers.
More laborers. So God is going to have to help with how we're going to reach them. That's he can handle that. Just put it on him. Just put it on.
Yeah, we don't worry about the how. So
Yeah, he'll handle it.
Father does. Yeah.
Just what he say, stand up and say, here I am, Lord, send me. And he'll take care of the rest. We're talking about faith and we're talking about church and how important is the church. Is it really important to go to church? And we just addressed that. Should we be teaching our kids these principles that brought us where we are? We had a discussion with some young guys and I said, my problem is that the young fellas and the young folks forget who sacrificed and what that happened to get them to have the ability to make these choices and to decide you don't want to work and do all that. All that comes from some folks that put their lives and their backs on the line for that. And just don't forget that is my thing when we talking about that. So as we continue to face these challenges, how you see yourself being really, really pivotal with this war against the truth with the Bible. We got a lot of people are at war with the Bible. And what do you think about this war with the Bible?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back down to accountability. Again, if you study the Bible, my father used to say, don't read the Bible, study the Bible. Mm-hmm. There's not one person, right? And you'd almost put money on it if it was a gambling man, right? Mm-hmm. But there's not one person who studied the Bible who has found anything in there that is not better for your life. If you study the Bible. Now, if you go by, well, my grandmother said this, or I heard this, or you quote something that you heard somebody say years ago, but without delving into the context, then you could throw out all kinds of. I hear people saying all the time, well, doesn't the Bible promote slavery, or doesn't the Bible? And no, the Bible does not promote slavery. The Bible addressed what was happening, right? It's different from addressing something versus promoting it. And so some people, again, because they're dealing with surface information, that's what we have in the fight. That's what we would have to battle. So my encouragement to everybody really is know what you believe. And if you have some doubts based on your upbringing or whatever it is, then start. The beautiful thing about it is no one can stop you from opening a book and reading and studying. So if you have some doubt, why not study it for yourself? And then you're able to make a more informed decision, right?
Yeah.
And you can speak more intelligently instead of what you heard, but actually know for yourself, you know what? I don't believe it because I read it myself. Or I do believe because I have read it, and I can see the difference.
And I love how God accepts all challenges.
Right.
You don't believe He's real? Challenge.
Try me.
Yeah, try.
Test me. Prove me.
You don't believe the Word of God is what it is?
Right.
Go at it. Most I think Ravi Zacharias was one. There's a lot of people that told that story. Some profound atheists and scientists have challenged the Word of God to ask God, are you really real? Let's go and let me find out. And they have become some of the most staunch, devoted followers of God from that challenge.
Yeah.
Oh, so take that challenge. That's
Study,
because I
study.
did it. I took that challenge, and I found that I found something even more beautiful. Because I was saying, man, it ain't true about vegetarianism, all that stuff. Yeah. But it was good. So we're talking tonight, and we want to get closer to being able to hone this thing in. But of course, it would take. We can talk for centuries, but that's the problem.
Yeah,
we got to stop all that talking.
Right.
And we got to be able to put some feet to the road and help these young people through our lives mainly, because now they're watching. They're watching, they're seeing all of the success of all these people, and they saying, well, why are they so successful? Christian folk this and that. These people successful, and why what God, with this whole thing about this prosperity, and God wanted everybody to be rich. What do you think about that?
that's a good question. Go ahead.
That God wants everybody to be rich. Well, yeah.
Depends on what rich is, right?
Yeah, and again, I know that's you got a lot of people who say their number one thing is, hey man, sow a seed, plant a seed, and you'll get this back in return and all that. And you're missing the main point. So it is not. First of all, let's start with what it isn't. There's a myth that somehow there's honor in poverty, right? That because you're poor, you're somehow closer to God. That's far, right? Far from also God's teachings. Mm-hmm. So it's not. There's no honor in poverty, right? There's no honor in mediocrity. So you're supposed to develop your skills to its fullest ability, to its highest ability. Mm-hmm. There's an account, a parable in the Bible where Jesus talks about a man, a rich vineyard. He owns this vineyard, gives certain things and watch people. He goes away for a long time. And then one person he gives 5 talents, another person he gives 2, another person he gives 1. And the person, when he comes back, the person has 5, doubles it, makes it 10. The other person 2 doubles it to 4, right? Mm-hmm. And some people say, well, that's your gift, that's your singing ability. No. He specifically says talent, and then he says to the one who didn't do anything, who buries it, didn't ply it, he says, well, if you knew I was coming back and you thought I was mean, he said, why didn't you give my money to the bankers and the traders so they could at least add interest?
At least.
That's not about singing ability. That wasn't the talent he was speaking about, right? Some people use it from a metaphorical standpoint, but he's speaking specifically, how are you doubling my money? How are you increasing what you need to do? So there's not a prosperity thing from the Bible perspective. I want to make sure we have a delineation that you are focused. Your mission is to do God's will. In doing God's will, you will always apply to be a better, more improved you. In doing that, it means that if you make 30,000 today, you got to figure out how you're going to make 60 tomorrow and make 100 tomorrow. Not because you're chasing the money, but because you want to live out your truest, fullest potential. Far too often, those who are teaching prosperity ministry turn people off because it makes it about the prosperity, where God wants you to profit in all things, not just money. What good is 50 million if your health is bad? Mm-hmm. So it's an overall healing. It's an overall prosperity, not just financial. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
So does that mean all according to his riches and glory?
Yeah, according to his riches and glory is what the promise is. Yeah. It's an if-then statement. Mm-hmm. So if you look throughout the Bible, right, God gives these if-then. If you will serve me, I will bless you. Mm-hmm. If you will do this, I will respond. Now, he also says his blessings fall on the just and the unjust. But I don't want just sprinkles of blessings. Yeah. I want the blessing when he says, if you will do this, if you will obey me, if you will be in my word, if you will, be dedicated to me, I will pour out blessings that you won't even have room to receive it. Yeah. Now, some of you may want trickles of blessing. I want full showers of blessing, right? And so, it's just like anything in life. You can do halfway things, right? You can study the night before, but it's always better if you can practice and study beforehand, weeks in advance, so you can really be successful. So it's no different when you're talking about faith or religion or anything else in life, right? You work out for 10 minutes versus you working out for 30 minutes consistently and focused and what have you. You're going to see a difference versus you just walking in 5 minutes saying hello. You see those people all the time in the gym, right? Hey, they're just walking around talking to everybody, and then they leave. Yeah. Nothing's been accomplished. So the same thing that I'm encouraging people, young people, old people alike, is the same thing you're doing in your life to be better. you have to apply the same thing. The principles of success don't change. You must be consistent. You must be dedicated. Last thing I'll share, still talking about this whole thing. I had a professor at FAM. He was visiting Dr. Pigford, and he asked a question to the room. He said, "What's discipline?" So if I ask you now, what is discipline? What would you say discipline is?
Sacrifice.
Okay. What would you say discipline is?
Pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Pretty much sacrifice, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's different than motivation.
Okay. And some people, when he went around the class, some people said, well, discipline, that's when you spank your kids, right? And some people said a variety of other things. But he said something that I thought was profound that stayed with me all these years. He said, discipline is doing something when you would much rather be doing something else.
Doing something else, yeah. I've heard
And he said, that's discipline. Mm-hmm. And that stuck with me. So, yeah, I would like to, you want to sleep, you want to do whatever, but discipline requires you to do what is necessary. Even though you much rather be doing something else. So that falls in line with sacrifice.
But you're going to do them because you know you have to do them.
Right.
It's discipline.
Discipline.
Yeah.
Right?
God would have us prosper in health and in our spirituality more so than the pockets. Because if he see that your heart ain't going to be able to deal with that prosperity,
Correct.
You ain't going to get it.
A fool and his money will soon part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that's why my whole presentation and mission is to make sure that it's not about gaining wealth. You want that. You want a better life for your family. But it means nothing if you don't even know how to handle it, right? There's so many accounts of athletes that will sign $20 million bonuses, $80 million. You look at their careers, maybe 8 years, and they made $75 million in that 8-year period. And at the end of that, within 3 years, gone. Mm-hmm. So it's not about how much you make. It's about, do you have the sense to keep?
And manage.
Do you have the sense to manage, right? Do you have the testicular fortitude to say no, right? When people are coming at you, to come at you for your money, right? Can you say no? Not right now. Or are you going to feed the entire neighborhood and in 5 years you're done and there's nobody else to continue?
Man, we're just scratching the surface right now. I wish that, and I pray that this reaches someone old, young, mid-age. It doesn't matter.
It's going to do it.
It's going
to
reach
right.
someone. Yeah.
God, he promised that it won't go out.
Void.
Yes, sir. Yeah. We're talking to Mr. Boyd, better known as Broad, and we
like a
live.
group.
Don't forget, if you like what you're seeing, subscribe. Give us a comment.
Please,
and let's look at some comments now. Can you see any comments or any questions as we sit here? And we can probably throw something out there. Who all live? We got anybody watching us tonight?
We have a couple people watching. Of course, Devin's in the house. He said, "What's up, everybody?"
Okay, all right, Devin. Davon.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, on Instagram, just joined live.
Okay, all right. How y'all doing that's coming in, checking us out? We talking about our faith. We talking about how important is church. We're talking about what state are young people in and how can we help them? How can we get them to be able to know that you have to believe something?
Putting it all together.
Fall for anything.
Yes, right.
And boy, our young people falling for anything, smoking. Huh?
Yeah, 2 individuals on Twitch and 1 individual on Twitter.
Okay, good to see you. No questions? Any comments? Don't forget to comment now. Y'all like, subscribe, comment. And
that helps us out, and we help
that
you
helps
out.
us. Yeah.
So how do you apply your faith to your kids? You got another generation, right? So how have you been able to apply? They see dad is successful, dad is moving, doing his thing. How have you been able to apply faith or expose them to that?
It's a beautiful thing, and that I see that at this age, at 51, 52,
50 old, yeah.
that I have a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
If I'm very fortunate, if I'm blessed to make it to see her be 21 or even beautiful 30, I'll be 80 years old. I'll be 70. She'll be 20. I'll be 70.
Yeah.
But my goal is to impart to her, based on all the mistakes and the different things I've been involved. I've been involved with raising many children in the same household with me, with my nieces and nephews, and then my own children. So I had a real good hands-on with that. So with her at 2 years old, and also my other young fellas at 13, I really try to impart those valuable lessons more so than I was able to do with the other kids. I'm more hands-on now because I'm in a position now where I can be with them more.
Right.
I was always grinding in my 20s and 30s,
absolutely, yeah.
running around trying to make sure it happened. So I wasn't there. Now I'm able to be there a little bit more with them and talking to them and watching them and being there, seeing their mistakes and correcting them. And I spend a lot of time with them. So I really want to, and I'm showing them how to pray and ask God for guidance and wisdom, and so everything ain't gonna go your way. And at this point, but it's okay to know that it's gonna be, it's gonna work out the best for you. So I talk to the little one a lot, and my wife, which is all this is new to her and my little children. That faith and having that, and I always pray not to be so rigid and push them away and don't have them be able to understand it. But I read around them, I pray around them every night and countless of times, so that I can ask for that wisdom to impart to this new little soul.
Yeah.
That one day we all have to stand before the King of everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the ultimate thing. You know, I never forget when I had a birthday party, and when I just had turned, I think I was just turning 21.
Okay. So about 40 years ago. Right.
Yeah,
I got you.
yeah, it's a long time ago. And I walked in, and my at that time my ex-wife had put had put up on the, when you walk in. As soon as I walked in, it says, "Prepare to meet thy God."
For your birthday party. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Really not a birthday party, but it was my
Yeah.
birthday, and I came home, and it said, "Prepare to meet thy God." Now, what a way to have a birthday, because that's what it's all about. And it scared me. I dropped everything. I was like, wait a minute.
Well, you thought she was going to put
The
something
Lord
on
is
you?
here.
What was going on?
I mean, I just thought that it was judgment time. I never forgot that maybe I was 30 something, but I never forgot how that impacted. Will we all? Because it don't matter who you are. You got to stand before the judge of the world.
Yeah.
I don't care how tough you are.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people might not believe that. Yes, sir.
We have a question here.
What is it?
I was trying to find out.
Facebook Live, for everyone on the mic, what do you think about traditional teachings of gospel and how the New Age church preaching prosperity is preaching? From Facebook.
Well, I think that
We kind of mentioned that a little
we
bit. Go
talked
ahead.
about it a little bit, but it won't get us where traditional values and views, basic Bible teaching, it won't get us where we need to be if we come away from what, it's so interesting that the New Age came out of what was old and what was traditional, and they making it, and it appears that it came out of nowhere, and this is a new way of doing things. It's just an altering of what was the foundation of everything that we believed, in our parents and the people that really held on to those core values. Abraham, Jacob. I think that to make people think, as you was talking earlier, that to have wealth and to prosper financially, which is contradicting, because it says what the rich young ruler, one of the only things that I remember made Christ the saddest, when Jesus was on earth and the rich young ruler, when Christ said, if you want to, he said, what must I do to be to have eternal life or whatever? He said, sell all I have and follow me. And he considered what he had.
Went away sad.
And he saw how Jesus was, and he went away sad. And out of all of the interactions that Jesus had, after you study the life of Jesus, that was my thing. Out of all of them, that hurt him the most, because he saw he saw this young man's future and his potential. Right. If he would have got rid of that, he saw him being so dedicated. So to sum up this, we will not make it if we come away from what got us here, and that's the basic principles of the Bible and the teachings of of Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, if I may add this too, in terms
go
of
ahead.
the questions and what I'm seeing in this current generation and in this world. Again, I'm all about accountability. The other part of this too is what was presented as the gospel was not the gospel. Because even as we talk about our parents, our grandparents, and so forth, they were lynchings, they were killings, they were whatever.
Oh, you're talking about way back. Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is not way back. This is, you know, King was killed in 1968, right? And so when you add your age, old brother,
Yes,
we're
Lord.
talking about that's only a few years before your birth.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about King is murdered, and 14 years later, the Cosby Show is on. It's not that long ago. So it's not way back. But I think part of it is when we say that old gospel to the question,
Yeah.
what I'm always promoting, what we love to promote is that it's not so much getting back to the gospel of your parents and grandparents.
No, don't say
It's
that.
about getting to what the truth is and discovering it for yourself. It's beautiful. It's a book. You can open it. You can study it. There are
old
concordance.
paths.
You got to study for yourself. And that's why I'm encouraging young people, old and all, is that your grandmother's religion won't save you.
No.
Right? Your father's knowledge, your mother's love won't save you. You've got to develop that understanding for yourself. Because when I have conversations, man, I've got nephews, right, that are under 30. And when they talk about MLK, they refer to him as, isn't he the guy who, like, he spoke or something? They don't have a concept of the influence that Martin Luther King had. They definitely don't understand the influence that Malcolm, El Haj Malik Shabazz had on society.
So they
because they
definitely
weren't
don't.
informed. They weren't exposed.
So Jesus is like,
So Jesus, faith, what?
What are you talking about?
Exactly. So what they've seen is what is portrayed on television and movies, and it's always that, that's church. But for most of them, that doesn't move them. That doesn't mean anything to me. That looks like emotionalism, sensationalism. So what we're encouraging people is to say, faith is important. Understanding what you believe is important. And if you don't have anything to believe, then start with at least studying it for yourself. Start there. Start dissecting it, right?
Yeah.
Start getting other books, researching, dissecting what this word really means, right? This love, as you mentioned before, prepare as your birthday gathering, prepare to meet your God. It instills fear, judgment in people, and most people don't want to deal with something that's fearful. I want to spin it. It is actually joyful to say God is coming. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing. It means there's no more sickness. There's no more death. There's no more cancer, right? My cousin died today, right? We were just talking about that earlier. Man, beautiful, beautiful being, gone. So the fact that Jesus is coming, or the second coming, if you believe as a Christian, that is a joyful thing.
For those that's prepared.
For those that are prepared.
Yeah.
And so what I'm encouraging you is it's easy to be prepared.
Yeah.
You make the choice to say, I want to still dance a little, drink a little, juke a little, do a little. We make that decision, right? Yeah. But if you say, what we got to do is make, we know what, I call him dum-dum, but the guy wants to make this thing great again. Nah, let's make Christianity joyful again.
Yeah.
Let's make it fun again. You can actually believe in God and still laugh, still make jokes, right? What you wearing today, right? All of those things, right? And I'm clowning you a little bit. But
I don't care.
But no, you can have fun.
You can have fun
with being a Christian.
The prosperity thing works,
Yeah.
especially now, because everybody wants a certain lifestyle.
Right.
And with what we talking about, that lifestyle doesn't work. It doesn't come with all that. But prosperity works. And it's a really big distraction from that type of lifestyle that we're talking about. The prosperity teachings, they work, and they've been so successful because everybody wants something. They want all this that it promotes. Especially if I'm a preacher with all this, and I'm preaching that.
Yeah. It's been glorified.
I want what he got.
It's been glorified. Like
I
crazy,
want what
man.
he got.
Yeah.
What else? Any more questions? I hope that answered it. I
think that was
that
it.
a little bit.
But if it's glorified, like all the other things that are glorified out there, it's hard to pull people in a different direction.
Yeah.
I mean, look, no one wants to be in band anymore. You know, like back in the day, everyone wants to be a rapper.
Yeah.
You know, or something.
You know that,
who
and
knows?
that life. You know, you know why they killed Jesus? Because his life was a constant
Reminder. Yeah.
rebuke.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, they couldn't deal with it no more. Man, get him out of here.
It's
Look how he lived.
money is not evil, and some people misquote that.
To love.
Money is not the root of all evil.
No,
it's
not.
the love of.
The love of
There you
it.
go. Yeah, it's a
The
love.
love of.
Yeah,
So
Ray
there's nothing
love that
wrong
paper.
with being
Ray,
successful.
no
You
love.
better talk about it. He loved that
There's
paper.
no love over here.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I made a mistake.
Abraham was
yes,
wealthy. Jacob was wealthy.
Yes, Lord.
Right? Solomon, woo, wealthy.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with
And he
that.
was wise and
wise and wealthy. So it's a matter of wealth will come as you are applying it in the right context.
Yeah, once the heart
it
is
is the love of it, the constant pursuit of it, regardless of anything,
anything,
else. That's where it becomes a problem, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. That's right. It was. That's all we got there, Vic. We talking about faith. We got some more people join in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Chief Hall Podcast. We talking to Boyd, Mr. Boyd, which we know him as Broad. He don't want me to call that, but I'm older than him, so I do what I want to do. You know what I'm talking about?
A lot older, just for the record. A lot.
Yeah. We and Ray, all us there. What you got?
Yeah, I was trying to read on a couple of them, but go ahead. What you got, Vic?
I'm a firm believer of the Spirit of God falling and imparting on everyone. The Holy Spirit can use everyone.
Everyone.
Just for conversation's sake, should women remain as preachers or allowed to preach?
I was just about to read that one. I was just about to read that one.
Okay, so
all right,
yo,
D,
who-
I
who-
see you.
who said that?
D did that.
Who said that?
Devon.
Oh, Devon
Oh,
did that? Okay.
okay.
He trying to start and shake up something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I truly believe what the scripture says, that women have a very important role and place in the mission of God and to present that. But I find mostly women were very instrumental as prophetess. I remember Deborah. I remember most times you find, if you study the scriptures, most times you find women were very integral in certain in those. Never were they ordained in the ministry in the scriptures. Paul, if you see, it was only 12 disciples. I mean, it would be a real interesting thing to not misplace a woman's role, because it's very important. But I never find that they were being ordained to the ministry in the scriptures.
Well, so again, I know we get into a theological thing. Thank you, Davon.
Thanks, Davon.
Right,
Okay.
for starting some controversy, but
We want
it's discussed in various faith practices, denominations. They have this discussion. What I tend to do is break it down to the lowest common denominator. So not so much whether or not you want to ordain or not ordain, or whether or not they should be preaching or not preaching. One of the greatest message, what is the gospel? The gospel is about Jesus. Is the good news of salvation, that Christ came to this world.
That's right.
Died for your sins. And if you believe in him, you too, right? That is the good news of salvation. When I look at the text, when Christ rose from the dead on that early Sunday morning, right, the people who came were the women.
Yeah.
All the men were in the house doubting. The woman came and spread the good news to say the master is alive. The good news about salvation has come. So they presented the message as well. That is sharing the word.
And sharing that gospel.
Sharing the gospel. Sharing the gospel. So when you look at the text, what we have to remember is there is culture that you have to read into it. There's poetry within the Bible. There's the wisdom that's presented, but you have to look at the times. So to say, well, Jesus never picked a woman to be a disciple. Well, no, he didn't pick a woman to be one of the 12. But when you go throughout the text, you see women were involved in the upper room. You see women involved at his rising. You see women involved in sharing the gospel. And they believed when others didn't. When Peter was arrested, and they were praying. They were praying all night long.
Somebody might say Mary Magdalene was a secret
No. But that's not biblical. That's
not
people
biblical.
trying to
Yeah,
infer,
yeah. Yeah, they
right?
just trying to
but
do
my
that.
point is, Peter is in jail, in prison, locked up between two guards in the text, and the believers are at home praying about him coming out of prison. When he comes out of prison, a young girl opens the door because he knocks, and she's like, Peter's at the door. Here they are praying about his release and don't believe that he's released. And that's part of the issue is when we get into these cultural things, like my business partner will say, there are people who praying for rain, but nobody's buying umbrellas.
Yeah.
Right. So they're praying for his release and doubt that he's at the door. What are you praying for?
Yeah.
So to his question, is there a need or should women be allowed to, I'm using that word, right? Personally, well, let me not say personally. When I study the Bible, I don't see a situation where women are not allowed to present the gospel. I don't see it because we just gave several examples and there are more where he's used women and Jesus on this earth elevated and liberated women, treated them fairly. What are you doing letting that woman of that kind touch you, Jesus, touch your feet, Jesus? He elevated. What are you doing talking to this tax collector? See, what we have done now is we're doing the very opposite of what Jesus came and did. And what he did was he uplifted those who were downtrodden and the outcasts in society. You touching lepers, Jesus?
You doing the
You
wrong
hanging with lepers? You hanging with tax collectors? You hanging with prostitutes? Jesus, we found her in the act of adultery. Now, you can't commit adultery by yourself. So she must have been doing it with somebody else, but they didn't bring the guy. They brought her. So in all these things, Jesus elevated. And so, again, the message, I know there's going to be different denominations. Devon, I got you. You know, all these other people having these discussions. But you got to break it down to the lowest common denominator.
and all the different examples. And what he said,
happened? He said-
Mary
What's he
Magdalene-
saying?
No, you have Chrissy, Kay, and Danny just joined the Instagram Live.
Yeah, my thing was
What's going
as
on?
far as they were being used by the Spirit because, of course, one of the biggest of those disciples was the woman of Samaria. Once she found Christ by the well, she told everybody.
Right.
And then you also got Mary Magdalene, which was one of his.
Right.
She was always with him.
Right.
But my
Lazarus'
thing
sister.
was, as far as ordained in the office sense of the ministry, they were all involved in my study as far as promoting the gospel with their lives and their thing, and they were also teaching. Like I said, I mentioned Deborah, which was a prophetess, and there was other prophetess. That's what I understand as far as that there. But they will always be involved in the ministry. But I just have not found.
Well, when you say ordained, right?
Ordination.
So ordination or being ordained.
Placed to be over the churches as the disciples.
No, I hear you, but ordained is simply the acknowledgement of what your witness has been already. It is simply the formal thing that will happen to acknowledge what you've already proven to do. For instance, they're not ordaining
but I mean, it's
the
a
guy
pro-
on the block.
No.
Correct. So it is your lifestyle to say we are ordaining you, human wise. We're ordaining you to carry out what we already see your gift is.
Yeah.
What
But
your
in
calling is.
Yeah.
When you look at it biblically, their calling, and again, I'm not promoting one thing or another. I'm just saying from a practical standpoint,
we're looking at it all.
right?
Yeah.
Is that these people who happen to be women were already called. They were already called and ordained by God to carry out a message, the greatest message,
sense, but I'm saying,
in a sense, in terms of what God has called you to do.
Yeah.
What we then do
as disciples, followers.
as we do is we will then say, well, we are going to lay hands on you to then do this work. What we have to also balance is the cultural and the fact that this was a male-dominated situation.
Especially
but even though it was male, and that's why I say that subject is interesting, and you got to pause and consider it. Even though it's male-dominated culture, and Jesus knew that, he still had women following and promoting and presenting. So even in this male-dominated culture, he still did that. He still did it where men, it was all about what we did. And he said, suffer the little children to come unto me. Don't stop them. So the point I'm making is even in a male-dominated society, right?
Sure.
And there are roles for men and women. So, I'm very clear on what gender roles and what roles are. So I'm not,
Yeah. And now.
right? I'm not whatever, but there still is when it comes to the gospel. I have not seen where God precludes you based on gender. Don't you know that you're all royal priesthood? That you're all part of this. There's no Greek nor slave. There's no free nor slave,
No bond.
male nor female. So even in that, from that perspective, it's to say that you are all a part of this royal priesthood to share the gospel.
Let me stir the pot real fast.
Stir it.
Because you were talking about something earlier, and I like that, the way you explained the Bible of how, America was claimed they were founded on Christianity and things like that. Let's go back to the power of the name. We call him Jesus in the Bible, as we know. But if there's power in the name, and we know that originally his name is Yeshua, what's the difference? Is it just because, my heart says, and I know because I was taught to believe now that his name is Jesus? Because we know your name, but if I started calling you something different because we went to another continent or something else and started to change it, I'm not going to say the power of the name is gone, but isn't there something a little bit there of understanding? Because didn't the Bible teach us that, my people perish for lack of knowledge, And if we're not trying to, if we're just stuck in our one way of understanding that text that we believe, in the original text, his name is Yeshua.
Well,
The Messiah.
yeah, no, I hear you, right? And so what I would say to that is my response or in sharing with you is that we don't want to get caught up on translation.
Okay.
Because if that's the case, then we throw out the word God easily. In some cultures, they would write G, no O, and just D, because they revere the name God by itself. In some places, they would just say
a title.
They would just a title, right? They would say Elohim or Jehovah or Yahweh. So you have these translations. So yes, there was no J, so it's Yahshua, right? So there's no J, but in the English translation, we pronounce it as Jesus. And so
That was the closest.
the closer of what we're doing from a
Who did
Latin
that?
perspective.
The Greeks did that.
The Greeks, right? And so which is Latin derivative, right?
Yeah.
And so, or tied to it. So I hear you. We can go and say, well, shouldn't we call him Yeshua? I don't have a problem. I can say it, right? If you're speaking that. But it's the same way as if when I say when God made man and God did Ruach. If I say that, some people wouldn't understand what I mean. That is Hebrew for God blew the Ruach, the breath of life. If I'm speaking, that's Hebrew. If I'm speaking Greek, I would say, and God blew the Pneuma, which is Greek for breath or wind.
Yeah.
So my point is, we can become so scholarly and we want to say, well, this was the text, the name, and forget that in translation, we often will put the English Latin version, if you will, of the same Aramaic text.
So it won't.
I don't believe it diminishes the power of what it is. We know who it is.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a matter of presentation. You don't speak Aramaic. You don't speak not even just Greek, but the Bible's written in Koine Greek, which is Old Greek, right? So we don't even speak in that language. So it's a transliteration, right?
Transliteration.
Yeah. But I hear what you're saying. And that was his name from a Hebrew Aramaic perspective, but we've come to translate it as Jesus. Right.
But you don't think that was dumbed down just a little bit, like over time, as we took some of the words and the transliteration was lost? Because when you go back and you understand it from the Hebrew text of it,
right,
there was a lot of power in the words, and it meant something than just like, okay, it means the same because Yah is power. It means something, and then just going,
Yeah, I don't think it dumbed down. I think what it is gave us more power.
Okay.
Because it gave more people access.
Okay.
Right.
And
understanding. So if you're in the British Isles and you don't understand Aramaic or Greek, the translation helps you to now enlighten your life and your mind towards God's desire for your life.
I understand that. Yeah,
right. So I don't think it dumbed it down. It just made it, I believe, more powerful. Right. So
or just made it more to accompany what the actual translation from the actual language was. Right. It made it where
the masses could get it.
Yeah, when I was reading all that, when you read all that stuff and you researching it, they really was trying to find a comparable word to use with the letters. So it was comparable from when it was translated, because like I always believe, God oversees all of this so that it doesn't affect, because the souls are so important to God.
It's inspired.
So no matter what happens, God is going to oversee how it comes out. So because he don't want to lose nobody over translation.
Jesucristo.
Yeah.
If I'm speaking Spanish, right?
Yeah.
Jesus the Christ. Yeshua Messiah. Right? Jesus the Christ,
Messiah,
the anointed one of
Christos
God.
is something totally different too.
Yeah,
So
the anointed one of God. So it's like you take Sabbath, the days of the week, right? In majority of languages, Sabbath is, in Spanish is sábado, in Russian is saboto, right? Sabbath is the seventh day of the week. We call it Saturday. Without getting into whatever. That's in every translation. Even in Spanish, Sabbath, sábado. They ain't even making any jokes about it.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
However, I don't think that the days of the week have different.
No,
power
it's a
of the
different
name.
different thing. But my point is that there's a translation to make it
100%.
because of the
Make it-
English language.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Sunday, first day of the week, domingo. Right, if you're doing Spanish, right. And it's funny enough, in I know this may be controversial, right. So in Ashanti, the language is tree. When they speak the language of tree, right, the day for they usually name their children based on the day that you're born in the Ashanti tribe. The day for Sabbath in Africa, in Ghana, West Africa, right? So the day in Spanish is sábado, English we say Saturday, Sabbath, whatever it is, as an example. In Ashanti, in Tree, is Kwame for Sabbath, right? Kwame. So they understood it as that. Sunday, interesting enough, is called Kwesi Broni, which is white man's day. Now, this is not an attack on whatever, but I'm saying
that's what it means.
they present it
That's
as
what it means.
white man's day because the colonizers came in and the Ashantis were not conquered. They're still not conquered to this day. But they called it that as a negative to say they are bringing this day that we don't even know about.
Yeah.
What is this Sunday?
Yeah.
Because they always honored the seventh day of the week, Kwame. But so I'm giving it slightly different than your point. But in translations, if you go to the root of what the power is, right, and I'm able to understand in my language, I don't think it loses the power. I think it never loses power. I think it has an effect on society when we try to change it to fit our culture and our standard and our personal.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I hope we get some comments on that one.
Yeah. Any questions?
Oh, yeah, we definitely do.
Ooh, yes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment.
You hear a lot of people speaking negatively about the prominent preachers on social media, some more than others. Do you think there is a serious divide in black churches? And how did we get divided?
Yes, there's a divide in black churches, and there have been a divide for many years. I mean, what issue you want to take that divide? So many issues divide the churches. But now, what was the last part of the question?
How did it get so divided?
Okay. How did it get so divided?
Can I say something real fast?
Oh, yeah.
This is one point thing that I remember someone said to me a long time ago, and I was in New York, and this person said that he said, "Oh, you a Christian?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm a Christian." He said, "Well, what church you go to?" And that was the first question that he asked him, instead of saying, "How long have you had your walk with the Father?"
What church meaning what denomination?
Yeah, with
Gotcha.
denomination.
Okay.
So I think that sometimes we out here set claiming more than we're understanding the thing that brings us together, the unity.
That's right. But that's what Satan wants. Satan is the author of confusion. God does everything decently and in order. So when there is confusion, that gives you an idea where it's coming from and why. Because a house that's divided, what?
Against itself cannot stand.
Cannot stand. So look at the state of our black churches. We just talking about young folk, black American young folk that have no include fighting and fussing against the word of God, the Bible, our church, everything that has to do with trying to be disciplined and dedicated to something. So you see what the fruit of all this is from. The question was, how did it get divided?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to, again, this is my thought process. It goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is it's divided because you had individuals that lost the mission. And if the mission is always Christ, if the mission is always God, then it's less room for you to be motivated and divided by personalities, by individual success, and by personal goals. And so the quote black church has always been within black community an institution. It's where you went to learn. It's where you went to figure out how to vote. It's where you went to do daycare for your kids. It's where you went to get some help with money if you needed money for your family. It's always been an institution, and it's always had often been on the front lines in many cases. Unfortunately, some people will believe that it's taken more of a back role, right? Because most of the movements or the progress that's happened, the marches that have taken place in the last 5-7 years or so has not been church backed. It's been individual backed or group backed, right? Black Lives Matter, all these other groups, right? They weren't church based per se. You had individuals that went to church, but they were not born out of the church movement. So I think some of that split is, again, I go back to the main point, I'm going to harp on that, is you have a divide after a number of years, after generation, when people were not secure, they did not have a strong foundation into what they believed. They were going to church because my mama went to church.
So the answer to that part of how did the churches get divided, I mean, how did we get to this point, the church is divided, is because we have come away from the old paths.
From the path of God.
Yeah. And that's what when the Bible says the old paths, it's talking about those commandments, those teachings,
Correct.
those doctrinal things. Because one thing that does separate all the churches is the doctrine
Correct.
that they believe.
Yeah.
So the things that the churches believe separates them. Now it's about 200 different denominations.
30,000.
Yeah. And the doctrine separates all of them from what it is. They can come together and do certain things, but when it boils down to it, their doctrine will keep them separated. Like the Sadducees and Pharisees were bitter enemies, but they came together to put Christ on the cross.
Yeah, and again, I'm always like, doctrine is from the Bible, right? So I would even venture to say it's their preference, not the doctrine of the Bible. The doctrine of the Bible is
their
pure.
Doctrines, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, their preference.
Yeah.
Their preference.
Or how they
and so, right, how they want to ignore the certain doctrines that they don't want to really uphold, they want to push down, or they want to elevate. Like you go to some places and this is about prosperity. We gonna get our groove on here, right?
Yeah.
This is about praise or whatever is defined as praise. I'm gonna get my praise on, right? So there's some places you go and there's an emphasis on one particular area. When you study the scriptures, and that's why I encourage people to study on your own, the scripture,
to show thyself approved,
is that you see Christ was balanced. He was balanced. So here he is in church every Sabbath, it says, as his custom was, he would go into the synagogue and he would worship. Then you also see him on the block. Now, not slinging anything, but he's on the block interacting, right? And moving with those who wouldn't go to church, who were the outcasts in society.
Miracles.
There's a balance to how Christ moved, and the crowds flocked to him. What we're missing is there ain't nobody flocking because we're not lifting up Christ. Again, if you are a Christian or you believe in, I know there are other faith systems that may be watching.
They all over.
But if you believe in Christ, we've stopped lifting him up. Now we want to wear the cross versus bearing the cross.
Watch out. Watch out.
I'm preaching now, right? So that's what's happening. And so because we're no longer lifting Christ up, we're lifting self up. We're lifting our preference. I'm Christian. We say it loud and proud, but our lifestyle. And we forget people are watching that. Now, again, it's not a condemnation. I know we in this kind of mamby-pamby, weak, malleable culture that we're in today, when nobody wants to be held accountable. They feel judged. I feel like you're triggering me, all those kinds of things. But the point is,
malleable.
You have things you stand on. God has things that he wants us to stand on.
And he'll give us the strength and the support to do it. I hope that answered your question in somewhat, or gave you enough to or make you even want to research it even more, where this divide came from. What you got over there? Any other questions?
That's it right there.
What, we done? Oh, we all good. All right, so like, subscribe, and comment, and we live, and we are Chief Hall Podcast, and we got our special guest. I've been knowing him for so many years. We were able to catch him, and we were able to have a nice, informative, and real good conversation with this brother. We go way back, and it's been a pleasure to have him here, and I know he got to go and get on out of here and do something. But everybody don't got to go home, or you don't got to go to bed, but Chief Hall, we out.
Out.